of wisdom, guidance, and inspiration.
Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra ji, Chairman CBDT, members of the CBDT, former Chairman CBDT, and former members of the CBDT, members of the CBIC, the Chairman of CBIC, officers of the IRS, assessees, tax assessees who are here on invitation, and the media. First, let me greet you all on this 164th Income Tax Day. It's not really very often that we have government departments or boards or any such institutions who have crossed 150 and who are prim and proper even today. So CBDT, you deserve all the praise for it. I make a particular mention of thanks for the former chairman of the CBDT, Sri Ravikantji, who came here, addressed us. Again, it's not very often that we do have former members of the fraternity to come enthusiastically to address the peer group or the juniors and to keep them motivated. We are indeed very grateful to you for your presence. I'll start with something where both the Revenue Secretary and also the Chairman referred to my last year's comments. I think there, like many times I do instantaneously, I did say about the 3 R's. And it's very humbling to know that the CBDT took it very seriously, worked on it, because at that time the voice was the assessee feeling that the returns are not getting assessed soon, filing is a problem, and then the refunds don't come, and redressal of grievances are not really happening to the satisfaction of the assessees. But between last year and this year, Chairman Nitin Gupta, let me put it on record, you have put in a lot of effort together with your team. As a result of which, there's definitely a different perception today, and there's always room to improve. I'm not saying everything has really become perfect, and I'm sure the board and the entire IRS is seized of this point that there's always room to change and improve. But immensely satisfying to know that the board and the service has taken these 3 R's seriously and improved on it. But these 3 R's, let me put it before you, are not just 1 year. They are continuous process. They are always going to be lingering in the minds of the assessee. So you've done well for 1 year, you've set yourself a high benchmark, now you have to follow it up every year. So the task is for you to take it up further. Very often, and I don't blame the assessees at all, very often the feeling is tax frightens me. Hon'ble MOS very clearly said it in his rich Hindi that, it's not always easy to be the most liked person if you're working in the revenue service and particularly in the income tax. CBIC gets away easily in that. So the expectations on this CBDT is far higher than what the people expect out of CBIC. So that way, it is more difficult for the income tax officers to prove that they are doing an honest day's work, they are in the service of the nation. If revenue improves, services of the government improves, welfare schemes get their due, and the country flourishes better. And therefore, a certain level of detachment is absolutely required for the income tax officers. I don't blame them. But yet, I also want to say that in the last 3-4 years, To the credit of the CBDT, tax rates did not go up, but revenue is steadily going up. Evasion is being controlled. And I'll get into the details of why I would be generous in my praise of the CBDT today. But I'll come to that a bit later. The most important thing that tax and tax-related matters always call for is to be transparent, is to be very objective, don't allow any subjectivity to come into it, and be taxpayer-friendly. And that is where I think I begin my talk to you today. I'll end it there as well. Inclusive of the minister to the last employee, the newest employee, it is this department which has a very tall order. You are going to have to be uncompromising in generating the resources. You are going to have to somehow make sure the revenue expectations are met. This year, much more than the BE, much more than the RE, you have shown that you're capable of collecting, and appreciations on that. But it is that which is becoming a very important task, as much as managing the perception about how we get that resources. And in that, I want to say that the government has not brought in any increase in the rates. So if the revenues are improving, it's not because we've hiked the tax rates. All right, there are times when imported commodities like fuel go up, indirect taxation, the rates there, the excise and other things go up. But here we are talking about the direct taxation. Income taxes rate has not been changed at all. But efficiency has improved. You've made sure that evasions are plugged, and as a result of which you're able to generate. And economy also is becoming more and more formalized. So as a result, you get a lot more people getting into this scheme of paying or being assessed for the taxation. Now, if I have not raised the tax, if government has not raised the tax, I'll again refer to one of the points which Honorable MO has mentioned. Prime Minister has been absolutely keen that technology is the answer for many problems that we face. And it was proved in the case of taxation, whether it's the GST Council or the CBDT, which was the first one to bring in the faceless, launched by the Honorable PM. It showed, in spite of the initial hesitation that all of us had, and I wouldn't say that the hesitation was only in the field formations. It was everywhere, saying, will it work? Will it, take off? Can this country adapt to faceless? After all, our assessees want to sit before the officers and say, look, please advise me how to go about it. Would they now feel completely cut off if they're put to faceless? All those hesitations, doubts, apprehensions are today completely removed. People realize it's a system which can work. Of course, they know it has got its own way. You'll have to sit and do it. You'll have to respond to it. You'll have to answer your emails. We've also brought in check filters unless it has a DIN, document information number. You're not going to be, which is centrally generated. You're not going to be sure whether that document is right or not. So if it has a DIN, yes, it is trustworthy. You reply to it. So system improvements using technology have all come in. And that is why I refer to the Prime Minister's statement that unless we get in technology, the 3 points which I said, transparency, objectivity, and being taxpayer-friendly, will never be achieved. And we could show that in a matter of 2 years since after the introduction of faceless, you are able to be a lot more comfortable with executing your service through the use of technology, and as much making the tax assessee comfortable with a simplified system And in that, the pre-filling of forms has come as a boon. It's not an exaggeration to say that. I've heard many assessees themselves tell me that the pre-filling has helped them. There are many people who are in transferable jobs, open an account in the place, probably keep a fixed deposit, forget all about it, and then you moved over to a different town, and now there's been at least 10 years since then, and suddenly it is the pre-fill which is telling them, oh my God, I've forgotten that fixed deposit which I started when I was in my first job. And then they claim, yes, it's mine, and therefore what assessment will have to be. So there are distinct advantages which have come about because of the introduction of technology. And in that, I'm not going to get into too much of a detail, but such changes, and not a change in the tax rate, such changes and not an increase in the tax rate has made tax assessee feel that he's better off filing, better off paying, because it's all now fairly transparent and simple. Pre-filling is one such a thing. Instant PAN is another. I remember in 2022, the Finance Act bringing the taxpayers' charter. It distinctly showed the commitment of the department to say, here's this is what we are going to work for. This is the charter which we will serve. And that's made a big impact in the minds of taxpayers, saying there is some code at least based on which they're going to serve me. Similarly, 2022 again saw the litigation management system which came into play. There wasn't going to be a system where litigation happens, there's somebody sitting and doing it today, some other person doing it the next day. At the end of the day, there's chaos, nobody is able to predict. That's not the case. There's a litigation management system through which all litigations are being handled. So there's a greater synchrony in the way in which all cases are being taken up. Even today, there are some discords. I'm sure the board is seized of it and they will take more action on it. 2021, 1 year prior to this launching of the charter, was the dispute resolution committee which was formed. And that has to a large extent brought confidence in the people that there is somebody sitting and sorting the disputes out, and so on. So when we came to 2023, the Finance Act again brought in some very important changes with which the confidence of the SSE increased. And in that, I'll certainly take at the top this step which we brought in, Section 43B of the Income Tax Act, particularly looking at the struggle small and medium businesses were undergoing each time, that they don't get their payments, but the person who received the goods or services, the company, is deriving the benefit of having paid when they haven't paid. So we made sure that the commitment of this government towards MSMEs is really realized by the MSMEs themselves, rather not just in words, but in action. So the company which doesn't pay the MSME couldn't take the credit for it or offset it through that year, in which year he has not even paid the MSME. So that change has brought in a great change in the mindset of the MSMEs who normally think they're always receiving or they're at the rough end of the deal always. So that one change, I'm very clear in my mind, brought in a sea change in the way in which companies are now treating the dues to the MSMEs. And these were not information taken from privy areas. They declare it every September. It is put in the MCA website. And from there we know they owe the money. And after which, if they claim credit in that same year, it shall no longer be recognized or approved. Similar, again, Finance Act of 2023, relief has been provided to startups. Today, India, the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, actually revels in the success of the startups. The unicorns, the soonicorns are all now common parlance because of the way in which our young are showing their talents, and for them, what is it that we can do from the income tax? Again, setting off and carrying forward of losses, whereby eligible startups will be able to set off and carry forward their loss incurred during the first 10 years of incorporation. I think this, the previous time limit, I think, was 7 years. We have now made it into 10 years. As a result, eligibility period for tax deductions for startups incorporated before 1st April 2024 has been increased by 1 year. So these are changes which are making material difference to the entrepreneurs who are on the ground, who actually generate a lot of activity, jobs, and turnover, as a result of which, when they eventually come to pay the tax, it makes a difference to them. So not rate hike, but efficiency hike. Not rate hike, but making sure that we handhold those who need that help, that fiscal support, where it is important. Similarly, as a part of the socio-economic welfare measure, the threshold limit for TDS has been raised from 1 crore to 3 crore for recipients who are cooperative societies. We know, all of us do recognize, that it was Prime Minister Modi who created a new department for cooperatives. Honorable Home Minister heads that ministry. And for cooperatives in this country, as much as startups, that kind of support is what was missing all these years, and now we have provided that kind of a support. You see the cooperative movement moving leaps and bounds in terms of progress. I did mention that we've never changed the rate adversely, because the whole approach is not adversarial. We are treating tax assessees as part of the wealth creators who provide, they may be salaried, but they provide the country the money which is so required for serving the people. For them, most of them belonging, at least the salaried, belonging to the middle class. It was very clearly in the new regime, we brought in a hike in tax-exempt salaries. It was 2.5, it was 5 lakh, it went up to 7 lakhs. And in fact, somewhere else when I was speaking on the 7 lakhs, I said, please do remember that the new regime, the second one, did not have a standard deduction. We brought it in this time. 50,000 standard deduction is also allowed now. And moreover, we didn't stop at 7 lakh. I've said this in so many words even earlier. We worked to see if that 1 additional rupee or 10 additional rupee after 7 lakh is going to be taken away in tax, and worked to such an extent that now 7 lakh, Sanjay, please correct me, 7 lakh 27,000, you don't pay any tax. So it's not 7 lakhs, it's 7 lakh 27,000 rupees, up to which you don't pay any tax if you were to be in the new regime. So there are such constant attempt to make tax and taxation a lot more people-friendly. Rates, people-friendly. Transparency, people-friendly. Technology, people-friendly. But yet, I would say, and I wish to elaborate on this a bit, because as always, the media friends are here. They are people who cover the economy. They have repeatedly heard all this. But today, on the 164th Income Tax Day, as we celebrate it, and as we speak about the way in which our revenue generation is going up, it'll be through the media that we have to address the public to say what we have done critically for the benefit of the tax assessees. I remember distinctly in 2022, talking about why should an assessee have to keep his tax records intact for 10 long years, and in the 11th year, he still has a doubt whether he should maintain it or can he discard it. We brought that down to 6 years thanks to Prime Minister Modi. He said, "Kitne saal tak unka jeevan barbaad hona hai, tax karke." We made it from 10 to 6 years. That was also done by Honorable Prime Minister and in this government. Now, no tax assessee is going to have to face a situation of reopening his assessment after 6th year. And even within the 6th year, that is after the 4th, 5th, and 6th year, they reopen the assessment only under certain situations. Non-filers, but having taxable income based on data which is with us. Filers, but evidences of understatement of income, again with evidence with us. So between the 4th year and 6th year, for only these category of people do we open up. And not to all again, only for those whose income is more than 50 lakh of rupees. This change was also made only about 2 to 3 years ago, 22, I think, if I remember correct. We brought it in saying it can't be that somebody has to sit with his tax records for full 10 years. So that change was brought out, and even there, it cannot be done randomly by somebody. A principal chief commissioner will have to give the permission to reopen. These changes were consciously brought in for the benefit of tax assessees. I wish to convey here, in such cases where they have been reopened after the 4th year or before the 6th year, this year we heard a lot of people saying, "Oh no, notices have come to all of us. What's happening? Why are so many notices being issued?" I just want to tell you that based on these two categories, where information is available, that more than what you have filed, there are reasons to believe that your income has been understated. Or where they are non-filers, information is that they should have been filers. Notices were sent. About 1 lakh notices, if I'm right, Chairman CBDT. And I understand and I want to convey this. These are not just being thoughtlessly sent. And I've been assured by the Chairman CBDT that by March 2024, this entire 1 lakh will be cleared, this way or that. So that set of notices which have been issued, based on the information that we have, for those whose incomes are more than 50 lakh, the notices and the treatment there, meaning assessment or whatever, will all be completed by March 2024. Post which, of course, every year, 4th and 6th year notices will continue. The process will be now rather more predictable than left saying, is it a fishing expedition? It is no longer a fishing expedition. There is also a need for me to say about a particular instance where cases which were reopened due to the decision of Supreme Court in the particular case referring to Ashish Agarwal cases. There would be about 55,000 such cases which were opened up as a result of that Supreme Court decision. These are only one-time cases. And I'm glad to say, just now I was double-checking with the chairman, that these have been completed by May 2023, this year. So the board today is not sitting over notices which have been issued and any level of discretion is being paid up or people are gaming the system. Doesn't happen anymore. And to that extent, on the 164th anniversary of the CBDT, I wish to congratulate them. It is not a place for discretion. It is not a place where people are gaming the system. There's a clear-cut approach. Following the Supreme Court order, 55,000 notices, they have been dealt with, and May 2023, they are finished. The business is over and done with. And for those notices which have come under the two categories, which will be the only two categories under which any case will be opened up in the future too, are only opened up after the between the fourth and the sixth year. 1 lakh notices which were sent will also be similarly closed by March 24. So I would want to assure the taxpayers, the assessees, that the CBDT and the field formations are conscious that they are working towards a transparent, responsible, objective, and taxpayer-friendly regime where very clearly the targets are before us. Now, looking forward towards 2047, when Honorable Prime Minister has set a goal for us that India shall be a developed country by that year, 2047. We are talking about Amrit Kal. We also now refer to Amrit Kal as Kartavya Kal. That's when all of us are going to be doing our duty, not just the IRS tax assessees as well. It is very critical that India doesn't lose the momentum and that we grow to build an India which the current youth deserve, and the previous generations, all of us belonging to the earlier generations, can recall what kind of changes have happened in this country. Just in case of the numbers that was talked about when the former chairman of CBDT spoke, what was the collection then? What is the collection today? Even now, there are observers of Indian economy who say that there can be a widening of the tax net. Even today, the widening is an issue about which we are talking. What will work? Nudge will work. Campaigns will work. That if it is above board and assessments are done, that is why the TCS and the TDS are always talked about. They are not newer additional taxes. Just track and trace. And therefore, there is a need for all of us to look at Indian economy and see how best we can contribute towards building a developed India by 2047. It was interesting, I heard, and I must confess I didn't hear it fully because I was also engrossed in some talk with the chairman and with Subhashri. Mr. Talati speaking. It was interesting how we observed it, being a practicing chartered accountant. He said, tax assessments used to be, correct me if I followed you right, one here with you and one concentration on the dais. Investigative, they later became intelligent. They also became innovative, but I must confess I missed out on the fourth, whatever you said, inclusive. So the evolution of the tax administrators, the evolution of the approach of the tax assessees, are all now very obviously available. You hear a practicing chartered accountant say how things have moved from being investigative to become inclusive. Therefore, I still think there's good possibility that all of us can work towards get the tax net widened, make it friendly, keep relevant the 3 R's, but I leave you with one thought. It's always the perception which matters. The perception about ourselves on this 164th year. It wouldn't be at all late, or it wouldn't be too early to tell ourselves, what is the perception about us? We are very efficient, we are tech savvy, we are very dedicated to our jobs. We have shown performance even as the economy is reviving post-COVID. People do recognize your faceless technology has really fitted in well. It has brought efficiency, it has brought transparency, but it is taking time for the perception also to change as much. Saying you're doing your professional job. Technology is something which you're good at using, and that's where the story should end. But even today, there is a lingering memory of a few who had used discretion. A few, I repeat, as a result of which the impression about the department, about the way in which it functions, that lingering memory is still there in a few SSCs. I wouldn't say in all. I would appeal to all of us, and I say us. I have not said you. I include myself in it. I appeal to all of us that on this day, particularly at a time when we are entering into Amritkal and at a time when we owe our children a developed India by 2047, we just have 25 years. Let us ask ourselves every time, if we are in doubt, how are we perceived? Maybe most favorably in difficult times, but just ask that question to introspect. We'll come back to our moorings, we'll come back to being stable, we'll come back to our dedicated selves. And similarly, one more question may help us. I say us again. How do we handle ourselves? Whether at the airport, whether it is the CBIC, or in your income tax office, or in the mails that you're using now extensively under the faceless. How do we handle ourselves? Because you're the face of the government when you're talking about the tax assessing. Just these two questions. And the Kartavya Path will be something which all of us will enjoy in building for our children a developed India. Thank you for listening to me patiently. Jai Hind.
Thank you, ma'am. We assure